What up? Shalom, everybody. What up? What up? How y'all doing? Welcome back to Reading with SHILO, to this episode of Reading with SHILO. I'm SHILO. What's the business? I'm out here, baby. We about to read. We're about to get into the medical apartheid and get into part 2 of chapter 15. So we can go ahead and get 15 out of the way as we keep on rowing through the book, rowing through the sea of pages that is laid before us. The sea of pages that's laid before. Chill out. All right. Understand? All right. I don't mind playing, but there's a time and a place, son. Picklehead. We're going to continue on with chapter 15, the Aberrant Wars. Aberrant Wars, and we left off at white weapons. White weapons. Man, we're almost to the end. We're almost to the end. We have the rest of chapter 15, and then we have the epilogue and the acknowledgments. And then that's all we have left on the. That's all we'll be done with the book. Yeah, I would have assassinated another one. Oh yeah, I'm out here. Yeah, but
He's
before,
huh? I said he's out there.
I'm out there. I'm out here. We out here. Getting our read on. So before that, we're gonna check the do the routine, work our body, work our mind, and work our body again. Give me 25 somethings. 25 anything.
25 minutes?
No, sir, not 25 minutes. 25 exercises, 25 lifts, 25 squats, 25 jumping jacks, 25 hand claps. Yes, sir. 25 push-ups for sure. That's what I'm about to do. 25 push-ups.
25 claps. 25 claps too.
25 claps.
I think I heard you say that.
25
I was gonna do.
Get out of my way. So I do about 25 things with other people. They gonna come do their 25 things. They better do 25 things.
We are gonna see SHILO do push-ups in action.
No, boy. Action, nah. You better get out of the way, action. Jackson. 25 things. Do 25 things. Whatever them 25 is, I'm gonna do these 25 push-ups or something like that.
Action.
Boy, get out of here. Action. All right, director. Mr. Director. Let's go. 25.
25.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Count them, man.
7.
Count them for me.
8.
Oh, let's get it. 9. Wait till I touch my toe. 10. 11. Come on, count.
12.
Let's go.
13.
It's 11. Oh, 12. 15.
16.
I messed you up. 17.
18.
19.
20.
Oh, you ain't counting right. 21.
22.
You gotta wait, man. Get out of the way. I gotta touch my toes.
21.
I'll take it.
22.
You gotta wait till I touch my toes. 23. Come on. Count for me.
24.
Count for me, right?
25.
Oh, Lord. What you mean, who? What you did? You ain't did nothing. You ain't did nothing. Yeah, slow. Maybe not. Right back. Let's go. Come on.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Yo, hold on. I can't see. My stuff on my head. Oh, I can't see you, DGs.
5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
Come on.
10.
Come on. Count for me, man. What you doing? You're supposed to count. 11, Only 11.
Oh,
11.
let's try that again. Let's start from 11.
Yeah, okay, we can start from 11. Don't start my bathroom 1. I'm on 11. Let's go.
12.
There we go.
13.
Come on. They better be doing something.
16. 17,
25 things.
18. 19.
Oh, a good googly moogly. We almost there.
20.
Come on. Count it.
21.
Count it for me. Say it loud with your chest. Oh.
23.
Oh, Lord. Oh, slow it down. Oh.
25.
Oh, I got one more in there.
26.
That's a regular one. All right. All right. All right. Thank you, sir, for counting for me. Well, I'm hot.
Sweating. Put it on those push-ups.
Oh, man. That's what it is. We worked our body, now it's time to work our mind, and we're going to come back and work our body again. I might be too hot for that. I have to take that off. Ooh-wee. Oh, I'm hot. I'm getting hot. I'm hot all that. Yeah, let me take all this off. Take all this off. Ooh-wee. All right, let's go.
You gonna let it dry?
Hmm?
Because your arms look sweaty.
Yeah, my arms are sweaty, man.
Just let them dry.
I'm gonna let them dry.
They're almost like they fit wet.
All right. That's why I need a paper towel. Give me a paper towel, my boy. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. All right. Now we done worked our body. Let's work our mind. And let's get into the medical apartheid. Let's get into this medical apartheid. Part 2 of chapter 15. Part 2 of chapter 15. Aberrant wars. Aberrant wars. We left off at white weapons. White weapons. Let me see. Yes, sir, you can. Thank you, sir. Yes, I heard you. Hey, also, please don't get my necklace.
Okay.
I think it's on the side of the bed. Yes, sir. Thank you, son. Appreciate it. You want to sit and listen? Oh, no problem. No problem. All praises. All right. White weapons. The medical apartheid. The dark history of medical experimentation on Black Americans from colonial times into the present by Harriet A. Washington. Now, Harriet A. Washington, a sister, a lady. Let me see what Miss Harriet A. Washington look like. Look, she right there. Look, she right there. Miss Harriet A. Washington. She's like one of our people. White weapons. The racial nature of CBW attacks is hardly confined to U.S. borders, and neither is the key role of U.S. scientists. Iraq's chemical warfare against the Kurds is often given as the most recent use of ethnic bioterror on the global stage, but it is not. The most recent biological warfare was the South African apartheid government's decades-long CBW terror campaign waged against its Black majority and against neighboring Black states. The physicians who headed South Africa's chemical and biological warfare program, the CBWP, were able to carry out their genocidal bioweapons campaigns only with the help of the American scientists. They was doing stuff to us. They was spraying mosquitoes that they had built and made in a laboratory, and they was spraying them on people, they hoping that the mosquitoes go bite people. And people was getting sick from the mosquitoes biting them, man. So they said that the government was waging bioterror on them. The current media obsession with bioterrorism focuses upon violence perpetrated by the politically marginalized upon developed nations. But this focus has obscured the vigor with which powerful governments can wield biological weapons against weak, racially distinct groups. For example, by the 1980s, the South African apartheid regime felt increasingly threatened by opposition abroad. And as its scientists and universities were cut off from the global community by academic boycotts and academic divestitures, the Black anti-apartheid movement was being joined by persons of other races, and the Multi-Ethnic African National Congress, the ANC, was gaining power and influence. In response, apartheid politicians and scientists funded research and development into exotic biological and chemical weapons for use against the Black majority so that the power of weaponized biologicals might help the white minority to destroy its opponents without firing a shot. They was trying like that stuff we be seeing, they be spraying in the sky, under the planes and after the planes. They would use things like that to try to kill people without having to say that they did it. In response, apartheid politicians and scientists funded research and development into exotic. I already read that. No, I didn't. In response, apartheid politicians and scientists funded research and development into exotic biological and chemical weapons for use against the Black majority so that the power of weaponized biologicals might help the white minority to destroy its opponents without firing a shot. Some apartheid-era scientists were skeptical at first, but others were certain that biological weapons could cripple and even kill enough anti-apartheid activists to allow them to control the nation's Black majority. And not one of the scores of CBW scientists was Black or colored. South African systematic murders via biological agents are important to this book because so many of the scientists involved in crafting South Africa's racist bioterror were Americans. In fact, the science of apartheid could not have existed without the avid participation and guidance of a handful of American scientific renegades. Oh, my necklace. Can you go, please? Oh, my necklace, I want my necklace. The existence of the genocidal medical program was dragged from the shadows only in 1999 when police arrested Dr. Walter Basin, the most powerful medical man in apartheid-era South Africa, on the Johannesburg street for the illicit sale of 1,000 ecstasy pills. Pooh, that boy was making that bread. Let me get 1,000 jiggers. They had the boys jigging in Johannesburg. 1,000 jiggers. When this was, when he had them jigging in 99. For the 99. Oh yeah, that's when they was jigging hard in the 99, 2000. Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. Appreciate that. I felt like I needed something. There we go. I'll take that. Not bad. But Basin was not merely a crazed drug dealer. As head of the South Africa CBWP, he was a highly respected scientist and confidant of the Surgeon General, and he held administrative positions at several major hospitals, supervising staff who were shocked to read of his biological doomsday schemes in the pages of Pretoria newspapers. On October 4th of 1999, Basin stood trial in Pretoria, although he was accused of murdering but the most conservative count, 229 people. He killed 229 people, man. All Black, with poison he was charged with only 67 deaths. His accusers included all of his surviving former Confederates. Each testified at his trial that Basin had engineered South Africa's rampant, far-ranging campaign of chemical and biological warfare against its own black citizens and against black denizens of neighboring African states. Basin also faced scores of other fraud, murder, and drug-related charges, which South African newspapers and trial transcripts recounted daily. Now, these charges were far too numerous to list in their entirety, including accusations that Basin supervised cadres of government scientists who grew cholera cultures for use in black townships and against anti-apartheid demonstrators, directed the production of huge quantities of narcotics, including ecstasy, to be sprayed upon anti-apartheid demonstrators to pacify them, and supervised the development and the use of poisoned foods for the use of assassinations. Man, that boy Basin was on some stuff, my boy. Basin's James Bond armamentarium included umbrellas that fired poisonous darts and hypodermic needles housed within screwdrivers. However, Basin was no long renegade. As head of South Africa's CBWP, he operated under the aegis of his personal friend, South Africa Surgeon General Niels Nobel. The CBWP's most dramatic political function was as an assassination of anti-apartheid heroes. And one former security police officer testified to the Pretoria High Court that in 1989, Basin poisoned the Reverend Frank Chicane of the South African Council of Churches, a charismatic anti-apartheid activist, by picking the lock of his suitcase and powdering the Reverend's underpants with toxins. Ooh, he put some stuff in that boy's drawers. He put some poison dust all in that boy's drawers. And when it got on his butt and his giblets, he was, oh, put that thing on his tenderloins. My giblets. No black South African leader was safe from Basin. And according to testimony from former CBWP scientists at Basin's trial, Nelson Mandela was still in prison when Basin's cadre of scientists plotted to poison him slowly with the heavy metal thallium to render him mentally incapable of managing the nation's anti-apartheid resistance. And chillingly, the well-connected Basin once cooked dinner for the unsuspecting Mandela at a mutual acquaintance's dinner party. Oh, that boy was trying to do some stuff to Mr. Nelson Mandela. But Basin was most adept at designing large-scale weapons of mass destruction, specifically tailored for blacks. Basin concocted a plan to saturate t-shirts with chemical agents, then to distribute the shirts gratis throughout impoverished black townships. Equally reprehensible was the CBWP research on an agent that would temporarily turn a white man's skin black in order to allow agents of the South African Defense Force to infiltrate black groups. Sound like what they tried to do in but they used Eddie Griffin. When Eddie Griffin when they tried to turn him into the white guy to infiltrate.
Infiltrate?
Yes, infiltrate. They was using him as a spy. So they had to put a disguise on him. And this is what Dr. Basin is said to have been working on, or CBWP was working on something that could turn a person who has pale skin to a person that has brown skin for only a little while. Like he got 24 hours. You got brown skin for 24 hours. Go up in there, listen, record, watch, take pictures, find out whatever you can find out for us. But in 24 hours, your skin gonna change back to the color it was. So you better get out of there, because if they see it, they gonna get you. All right, let's keep going. Dr. Bason's chemical grasp exceeded the borders of South Africa, targeting blacks in other African countries. In just one incident, Bason's erstwhile lieutenants described how they forced 200 Namibian prisoners onto a plane, injected them with an experimental muscle relaxant that collapsed their lungs, then dumped their bodies from the plane into the sea. The death of activist Stephen Biko is attributed to similar poisonings and administered after he was beaten by South African security police and deprived of medical care. The Washington Post even traced the 2001 U.S. anthrax attacks to the South African CBWP, and evidence taken from a Frederick, Maryland pond by the FBI suggests that perpetrators handled the deadly bacterium underwater without infecting themselves or releasing the anthrax spores indiscriminately. This technique was devised by the CBWP. The South African bioterrorist campaign depended upon very close relationships with U.S. scientists. And despite the supposed isolation imposed upon South African scientists by the international embargoes of the 1980s and the 1990s, Bason and his minions could not have undertaken biological warfare without the support of the U.S. government. And from 1981 until 1993, the United States supported water basins weaponization programs by financing close collaborations with the U.S. scientists and by sponsoring Bason's sojourns to the United States for conferences and education. For example, in 1983, Bason attended a closed Department of Defense conference on biological and chemical warfare in San Antonio. And during his trial, Bason recounted his participation in the 1981 federal conference in San Antonio with Army officers from the United States, West Germany, Japan, Britain, and Canada. He declared, "I must confirm that the structure of the CBWP project was based on the U.S. system. That's where we learned the most." Bason says, he was also grateful for expert and American consultants because the CBWP was dependent upon a colorful assortment of American scientists, especially Larry Ford, MD of California. Ford and Bason shared strange research proclivities, acerbic racist sensibilities, and a fascination with scientific genocide. Extant medical and legal documents, and the testimony of Bason's former Confederates under oath described their shocking joint research projects. And according to Ford's lawyer, he was a chemicals weapons researcher for the U.S. government in the 1980s. In 1987, the United States sent him to South Africa to train microbiologists at the military-run Roodeplaat Research Laboratory, the RRL, a key component in South Africa's chemical weapon program and a front for the Apartheid South African Defense Force. Now, Ford returned often to teach the RLL scientists how to reproduce biological agents such as anthrax and botulinum. Anthrax and botulinum toxin for the use as weapons against anti-apartheid forces and against blacks in general. who is trying to kill a bunch of people. He also taught apartheid defenders how to transform innocuous objects such as dollies and tea bags, or doilies, and tea bags into biological weapons. His seminar series, a master class for poisoners, proved popular among South African scientists who dubbed it Project Larry. And Lieutenant General Lothar Neethling, head of the apartheid regime's police forensic laboratory, was in attendance. So was the RRL microbiologist Dr. Mike Odendahl. What up, Berdillion? Yeah, no, I'm reading. Y'all there? All right, for sure. Berdillion. So was RRL microbiologist Dr. Mike Odendahl, who recalls Ford spent an entire day showing us how to contaminate ordinary items and turn them into biological weapons. He says Ford gave them ideas about how to infiltrate innocuous objects such as perfume or household items and place them in close proximity to the potential target. Ford's expertise in the toxicology of everyday life was put to use as South African physicians busily set about eliminating the enemies of apartheid. And Ford was warmly welcomed within the nation's top echelon of medical politicians. For example, the home of former Surgeon General Dr. Niels Noodle is graced by the prominently placed framed photograph of him and Ford posing with a lion that Ford had shot. And back in the United States, Ford's California friends and neighbors praised him as a good Samaritan and devout Mormon. To South African journalists who descended in the late 1990s to inquire into his prominent role in the recently revealed science of genocide. However, his neighbors had occasion to revise those warm scientists in March 11th of 2000. And that weekend, 4 dozen area families had to be evacuated when police searching the grounds of Ford's Irvin home discovered 28 containers of firearms, deadly biological weapons, and live ammunition. Ford himself was dead, having shot himself on March 2nd as police closed in to question him about the attempted murder of his business partner, Patrick Riley. Ford's suicide, the discovery of the biological weapons cache, and the unveiling of his ties to Basin, Noble, and Project Coast, described below, all raised FBI suspicions that a multitude of American crimes utilizing bioweapons had been committed in South Africa by Ford and other U.S. scientists. And accordingly, the FBI has undertaken a weapons of mass destruction investigation. Ford's suicide spared him from his scheduled appearance to give testimony at the U.S. leg of Wilder Bason's trial, where Bason's faced 61 charges, which encompassed murder, drug trafficking, and fraud. And the CBWP's ultimate goal was the development of the pigmentation weapon that would kill or harm only Black people. As apartheid waned, and the legal web closed upon Basin, his former associates say that he furiously turned his attention to the production of the unthinkable, a deadly virus that would infect only Blacks. And the CBWP dubbed this key endeavor Project Coast. But was this ever a real threat? How practicable how practicable, I think it's practicable. Might be practicable. How practicable, let's see, let's try both. How practicable were Mason's hopes to tailor biological weapons against blacks? How practicable, I think it's practical. How practicable were Mason's hopes to tailor biological weapons against blacks? Very, very,
You
very.
need 2 more pages?
We're going to see, son. No, sir, it's more than 2 pages, sir. But if you're done, you can go. I'm going to finish reading. That's what I'm going to do. You can finish listening if you want. I like that you've been here this long. What up, my boy?
Did your dad leave back?
I love you, my son. You know I got more time for bed, right?
That was the last movie of the
I don't
fight
matter. Man, it's time for bed.
Yeah, 1 more episode. Then I
Okay.
watched the last one.
Let me see what time it is. 9 o'clock. Yes, sir. So that's what you can do. Cut that off. What else do you need to do?
Brush my teeth.
Oh, that's a good one. What else? What about say your prayers?
I can't say those. Yes.
You can say it. You don't have to say it like I said. You say it how you want to say it. Now, don't be trying to rush through them, though. But, yeah, go ahead. Get yourself together. Hope you have your wonderful sleep. I'll be in there in a little while.
Okay.
Look outside. See a bird all outside. For example, I'm way past that. Here we go. I'll go up here. There's strong evidence from credible sources that the unthinkable had been achieved. The active development of bioweapons against specific ethnic groups, including those specifically tailored to injure blacks, and may already be in industry as early as the 1970s. The respected Armed Forces Journal Military Review discussed the possibility of devising bioweapons to target racial groups, and Dr. Carl A. Larson, head of the Department of Human Genetics at the University of London, Sweden, discussed the past targeting of racial minorities and the relative ease with which many of these weapons could be tailored to the genetic vulnerabilities of specific ethnic groups. Yes, sir. And then it's time for bed. In fact, a report entitled Biological Testing Involving Human Testing by the Department of Defense Senate Select Committee on Health and Scientific Research indicates that the United States may have sought to develop such weapons 30 years before the military review article. And the committee's report documents how a U.S. Navy contract supported the University of California's 1940s test of airborne fungal spores that spread valley fever. The spores can cause deadly illness by seeding in the lungs and then infecting other body organs. For valley fever kills half of those it sickens, and the university's research found that African Americans and Asians were more susceptible to the deadly fungal infection than whites. Dr. Gerald Horn of Brooklyn College claimed that the Army and Navy investigated the fungus's possible development as an ethnic weapon as early as the 1940s. Decades later, at a 1977 congressional hearing, an unnamed Pentagon official recalled how the armed forces spread fungus in the Norfolk Naval Shipyard in Virginia and on a loading dock in Mechanicsburg, Pennsylvania. In both work sites, most of the laborers were black, and The official specified that the Mechanicsburg docks were particularly chosen because Negroes are more susceptible to the fungus than whites. Throughout the Cold War, Western newspapers were peppered with sporadic accounts of ethnic and racial bioweapons being developed by South Africa with U.S. assistance. I bet people didn't want to believe that shit too. The U.S. news media broadly maligned all such reports as misinformation, disseminated by the Soviet Union to embarrass the United States. And however, in 1999, a decade after the dissolution of the USSR, the British Medical Association, the BMA, warned against ignoring the diverse reports that such weapons were being widely developed. The BMA insisted weapons could theoretically be developed which affect particular versions of genes clustered in scientific, ethnic, or family groups. And in its January 1999 report, Biotechnology, Weapons and Humanity, added that the pending completion, or the pending completion, there we go, of the gene identification arm of the Human Genome Project would carry the adverse effect of facilitating the production of such weapons. This warning took a new urgency in the wake of the September 11 attacks and after the completion of the HGP project in 2002. However, interested scientists and nations have not waited for these milestones. And in 1998, London Sunday Times story alleged that Israel already has used South Africa's research to develop a genetically specific weapon against Arabs. And such weapons, why would you want to? If y'all the same people, if you come from the same land, if it affects Arabs, it should affect you. If it don't, then something is wrong and something ain't true. Such weapons developed is not nearly so far-fetched nor so difficult as it sounds. And already London police have used American scientific expertise to tailor a non-lethal weapon, the mother of all stink bombs, to specific ethnic groups. In 1998, the Pentagon commissioned scientist Pam Dalton from the Monell Chemical Synthesis Center in Philadelphia to test disgusting odors. One question she was trying to answer was whether there were different cultural reactions to bad smells. She tested the odors on 5 ethnic groups, and she said that the malodorous weapon made volunteers scream and curse after just a few seconds of exposure. If these were released, they would clear an area in seconds. Oh, what's that smell? Get out of here. The most ethnic weapons under discussion are less benign. Some could be effectively crafted merely by exploiting existing variations in genetics, lifestyle, habits, health profile, and even diet. Even a low-tech approach can be quite selective. For example, approximately 82% of African Americans live in urban areas, and predominantly Black urban areas have an extremely low density of white residents. So, simply striking certain areas of Harlem, East St. Louis, East Palo Alto, or Chicago's South Side would target Blacks with near surgical precision. And one could also lace particular ethnic foods marketed to African Americans with biological toxins, like chicken, fried chicken. Oh, you want some of that fried chicken? Put the zombie shit in that chicken. They will eat it. Infusing malt liquors, fortified wines, and African Americans' ethnic delicacies would target Blacks as well. Such scenarios may be redolent of paranoia, but the ease with which they could be released was brought home in 1968 when the Pittsburgh Courier, a Black newspaper, reported on incidents that were inspiring a fear of racial genocide among Black Americans. In 1967, it reported a white Sacramento millionaire was convicted of plotting to poison 2 batches of cut rate gelatin destined for the shelves in stores in black neighborhoods. When arrested, he divulged his plans to pump cyanide through the air conditioning system and into the water supplies of exclusively black institutions. Man. Mm-mm-mm. But most discussions of bioweapons center on the strategy of selecting toxicants that affect only a selected group or that affect them far more adversely. Such agents do exist, and although toxicologists do not agree about the extent of difference, poison centers, when contacted about an instance of a child eating mothballs, will sometimes ask, is he African American? Because G6P deficiency, an asthmatic variation that is more common among African Americans than whites, enhances the toxicity of naphthalene, the active component of mothballs, and weapons can easily exploit such vulnerabilities. Similarly, if medications marketed to African Americans, such as hydroxyurea for sickle cell anemia and Badil for blacks in heart failure, were tainted, many blacks but almost no whites could constitute the victims. And weaponizing the 1A genotypes of the hepatitis C virus, the HCV, coupled with geographic distribution, could target African Americans, and other psychological differences between whites and African Americans could provide the fulcrum for targeting weapons. For example, as Chapter 1 explained, more than 70% of African Americans and 95% of sub-Saharan Africans lack the Duffy gene, which is almost universal in white Americans. Therefore, developing a poison that is harmless in the presence of this gene would also target most African Americans, while sparing their white counterpatriots. Project Coast. Under apartheid, a staggering variety of ethnic biowarfare initiatives eclipsed all the tentative musing about racial targeting. South Africa's Project Coast long ago moved from theory to selective racial murder via bioweapons, with the critical assistance of American scientists. In the early 1980s, fear of a black tidal wave drove white scientists to try to develop a variety of means that could ensure the survival of the white South Africa. Plans were devised to build a large-scale anthrax production facility at the RRL, observed the Bulletin of the Atomic Scientists. And from 1981 to 1993, Water Basin placed Project Coast under the direction of Don Goosen, MD. And Goosen told the Washington Post that his division was under orders to perfect agents that would preferentially sabotage blacks' fertility, and to devise a silver bullet biological weapon designed to kill only black Africans. Goosen supervised a multitude of biological assaults on black townships, including the release of pathogens and their vectors, such as mosquitoes, to see disease epidemics there, just as the Army and the CIA had released them over Carver Village. These involved in Project Coast also laced flyers, chocolates, letters, and cigarettes with anthrax and saturated t-shirts with poisons. Goosen, Basin, and their deputies investigated the use of mandrakes, amphetamine, and ecstasy for crowd control, infused township water supplies with treatment-resistant strains of cholera, and deployed napalm and phosphorus against blacks in Namibia and Angola during the 1980s. I see why the boys was mad in all these other places. Basin also ordered Goosen to suppress black reproduction surreptitiously and suggested the clandestine addition of contraceptives to townships' drinking water. Basin stressed that this was a direct edict of the South African Surgeon General, and Project Coast also set up international shop, according to the 1989 price list that included salmonella-infused sugar cubes and pesticide-laced beer and peppermints. And now, chillingly familiar threat, envelopes sprinkled with anthrax spores. Only the fall of the apartheid cut Basin's efforts short. And in its aftermath, the United States and Great Britain asked F.W. de Klerk's apartheid government not to hand over the fruits of Dr. Basin's labor, the biological warfare technology, to the new ANC government. Instead, de Klerk met with Nelson Mandela, who ended the program. And after the U.S. anthrax attacks in October of 2001, Goosen tried not only to sell Project Coast research documents, but also to interest the U.S. Department of Defense in the partnership for developing South Africa's repertoire of anthrax vaccines and anti-sera specialized antidotes. I wonder if I had to take this anthrax vaccine when I was in the Army. I wonder if that's what I took. Not that they forced me to take. I wonder if that's what it is. According to the Washington Post, Goosen's other offerings to the FBI included modified plague, salmonella, and botulism agents, and anti-sera intended to strengthen resistance to any future bioterrorism attacks. The DoD set up a January 2002 meeting between Goosen and Bioport Corp, a Michigan company that has the sole license to produce military anthrax vaccines. Yeah, it's making it sound like it might have been. Oh, shit. But no agreement was reached, and the Americans demurred. The Americans demurred when confronted with Goosen's voluminous, there we go, demands, which included a $5 million cash disbursement, amnesty, and immigrant status for a wide assortment of apartheid area researchers, family members, and hangers-on. The United States did, however, quash the sale of biological weapons to Middle Eastern nations. Thus, Goosen and the other apartheid scientists were forced to take a less lucrative route to amnesty. They confessed their crimes to the South African Truth and Reconciliation Commission, the TRC, and in this way, they escaped the sort of public high-stakes trial that threatened Basin with the loss of his medical degree, wealth, and freedom. Man, all that shit should have been took anyway. Pretoria bioengineer Dr. Jan Lawrence, who later headed the biotech firm Prototechnic, was one of the scientists who confessed and applied for amnesty to the TRC after the fall of the apartheid. And by doing so, he and his Confederates escaped the fines and imprisonment. To say nothing of it was all right for them to snitch. By doing so, he and his Confederates escaped the fines and the imprisonment, to say nothing of the death sentences that had befallen their Nazi counterparts in half a century earlier. Faced with ruin or confession, the Project Coast and CBWP scientists admitted their years of heinous research in the service of racial genocide. And Basin, their boss, was a lone holdout. He refused to confess or to apologize, and evidently hoping that he could beat the charges, even with his former subordinates arrayed against him, giving reams of damning testimony. And despite the implicating confessions by his colleagues and a slew of eyewitnesses to genocide, Judge Willie Hartzenberg dropped the murder charges against Basin in 2002 and rejected the testimony of all 153 witnesses against him. Oh man, everybody gotta go. That's how I feel. Despite the implicating confessions of his colleagues and a slew of eyewitnesses to genocide, Judge Willie Hartzenberg dropped the murder charges against Basin in 2002 and rejected the testimony of all 152 witnesses against him. Only Basin had testified in his own defense, and Basin was the only testimony that the judge accepted. Hartzenberg dismissed all of the evidence against him and found Basin innocent of 46 charges, including murder, drug trafficking, fraud, and theft involving some R37 million, 3.7 million in U.S. currency. But he did not stop there. For good measure, Hartzenberg also granted Basin amnesty. I know they wanted that boy head gone. The trial, South Africa's longest, had lasted 30 months and cost the state R20 million. I don't know what the R means. 2 million in U.S. currency. And in 2002, the prosecutor's request for a retrial was denied. And standing between Basin's many accusers and conviction was Hartzenberg, an apartheid-era judge who was widely viewed as a holdover, nursing, as he did, a strong nostalgia for white minority rule. He had remained on the bench despite an attempt to recuse him before the trial started. And once the trial began, court journalists alleged Hartzenberg made no secret of who he most admires in his courtroom. Hartzenberg likened Basin to a Virgin Mary in open court and threw out conspiracy and murder charges that legal analysts insist should have been prosecuted. Man. However, one needs no legal expertise to wonder how Basin could be innocent when so many of his key lieutenants testified in detail and with consistency about crimes they committed together. Basin's innocent verdict had been predicted by news analysts and based upon the all-white courtroom players and the pro-Basin bias of the judge. So Basin was right to gamble that he would be convicted of no crime and serve no sentence. And the judge, the baristas, the journalists, and the scientists, both South African and American, as well as the trial analysts, were all white, leaving one to wonder, who speaks for the black victims of the Dr. Death? ANC official Smuts, I know I'm going to butcher the name, Nanyama Smuts, ANC official Smuts Nanyama, resorted to understatement. The justice system has let us down on this case. On September 2004, appellate court decision raised hopes that this bleak failure of the South African legal system may yet be mitigated by some measure of justice. And the appeals court found that Hartzenberg had erred in throwing out charges related to the deaths of hundreds of blacks outside of South Africa, those in Namibia, Mozambique, Swaziland, and the United Kingdom between 1979 and 1989. Citing a real and substantial connection, the court granted South African prosecutors permission to reopen 6 charges of conspiracy and murder against Basin and in the deaths of ANC members, Southwest African People's Organization, SWAPO or SWAPO members, and others marked as enemies of the apartheid state. However, in late November 2005, South Africa declined to prosecute, citing the prohibition against double jeopardy. And South African prosecutors have abandoned hopes of trying Basin again. But in 2006, as this book went to press, the legal systems of neighboring nations such as Namibia were considering attempts of extradition and trial. attempts at extradition and trial. As for bioterrorism, back in the United States, a similar campaign for the truth against government-sponsored bioterrorism was proving equally futile for the Black victims. As mentioned earlier, MK Ultra, the CIA mind control program that began in 1953, had been exposed by investigative reports as the culprit of the biological assaults on Black Floridians, Georgians, and Virgin Islanders. Of course, this was not news to Georgia legislator Dorothy Palote, whose description of her frustrated attempts to attract governmental recognition of the atrocities at Carver Village opened this chapter. And Palote's grateful neighbors elected her county commissioner, then state representative in 1984. And she never stopped trying to get an acknowledgement of the government's actions in Carver Village and some compensation for her neighbors. In 2004, she explained to me that the exposure by the Church of Scientology and the national news media had failed to bring justice to Carver Village victims. We have several meetings that were very regularly attended by representatives of various organizations and the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, and our congressman sent someone. We talked about it, but because we were lay people, we needed expert advice. And some people we needed to dialogue with did not show. And later, some people from the government approached me saying they were going to have congressional hearings, but they never did. They never called me back when I called about it. And Palote is passionate about health issues, large and small, that pollute the lives of those residing in forgotten small Black communities like Carver Village. And although she may appear proposing to the uninitiated, Palote has accrued a great deal of political power because her constituents trust her, and she has not been reluctant to wield that power in what she considers their best interests. This has earned her some political enemies, and she has been ridiculed for some of her legislation. For example, she introduced a bill to prevent supermarket baggers from licking their fingers to open recalcitrant plastic bags while packing customers' groceries. Much was also made of murky claims Palote made regarding the fate of Chandra Levy, the 22-year-old intern who disappeared in 2001, and reports of her affair with California Representative Gary Condit were disclosed at the time, and Levy's body were found 13 months later in a wooded area as Palote had predicted. But the Scientologists report and subsequent mainstream news media accounts of biological agents at Carver Village validated Palote, and later news reports revealed some projects of which Palote had never dreamed. For example, MK Ultra scientists had utilized technology in the form of a machine they devised called the Biogen. It mass-produced pathogens, including cranking out huge vats of cultures that could cause fatal illnesses, and the CIA financial archives include invoices The CIA financial archives include invoices for the maintenance and repair of the machine over a period of 13 years. During that period, the Washington Post speculated MK Ultra scientists may have produced hundreds of pounds of various biological agents and microorganisms. Damn, they're trying to kill people. The biological agents used as friendly fire to test the vulnerabilities of blacks in Carver Village represented just the first wave of governmental domestic bioterrorism. The Biology of Doom, a book by Ed Regis, described how whites as well as blacks were targeted by government-produced pathogens in other cities. And in San Francisco, light bulbs filled with purportedly benign bacteria were possibly disseminated in public areas where they were dropped in the subway system so researchers could study how effectively the pathogens would spread. The Special Operations Divisions used custom-fitted suitcases in 1964 and 1965 to spray bacteria onto unwitting passengers in Washington, D.C.'s National Airport and in Greyhound bus terminals. And the Special Operations Division scientists counted the ticks sold at the time of exposure and thus were able to determine that the infected passengers spread the bacteria to more than 200 cities. These tests were undertaken to determine the result of using smallpox and other deadly biological weapons in public places. But unlike what occurred with the Carver Village exposures, the agents substituted purportedly harmless bacteria called Bacillus subtilis, a Bacillus IA, a rod-shaped bacterium that grows in the presence of air. However, B. subtilis is not harmless. We now know that it triggers respiratory infection, blood poisoning, and food poisoning. Other major cities were not spared, and a 1979 report exposed Operation Big City, the CIA's 1956 secret biological warfare experiments that were conducted in the New York subway system in partnership with U.S. Army personnel. These exposures were more democratic than those detailed here and affected more people in every race. But still, other projects that targeted the Northeast demonstrated the CIA scientists' special interest in testing African Americans. For example, another road of tests in various East Coast cities sought to validate claims that a species of fungus caused lung disease in blacks more often than in whites. And it was sprayed throughout an area where more blacks than whites worked. An Army report stated that the purpose of the exposure was to test this vulnerability because within this supply system, there are employed large numbers of laborers, including many Negroes, whose incapacitation would seriously affect the operation of the supply system. And Senator Paul Wellstone, a Democrat of Minnesota, commented, "No one should ever have been subjected to these tests." And he helped to mount the congressional investigation into the project's health effects on the subjects. And none of these large-scale biological assailants on Black Americans have been formally acknowledged by the government. Dorothy Pilote retired in 2001 after nearly 3 decades in public life. And although she remains active in attempting to protect the health of her community, but as she leaves the government arena and as the affected residents of the nation's Carver villages age and die, a real danger looms in the memory of the governmental mediated bioterrorism will die with them unless it happens again. And that has been chapter 15. That has been chapter 15, man. We have knocked out chapter 15 of the Medical Apartheid by Miss Harriet A. Washington. All we have left to read is the epilogue and the acknowledgments. Man, we'll be out of here. So we worked our body, we worked our mind. Let's work our body one last time. I got people waiting on me. So I'm going to do my 25 things quick, fast, and a hurry, man. So, oh, no, I don't want to do it like that. Let me do it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Ooh, yeah. Upsy daisy. 7, 8. I feel like I'm doing 8. Oh man. 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, sucker. 25. 25. I hope you did your 25 and did mine, man. I'm out here. Hey, we're almost done with the book. We're almost done with the book. We're going to keep rolling, man. We're going to keep rolling through the sea of pages. That's what we're going to do. We're almost done. We're going to keep pushing. We're going to keep pushing through the sea of pages that Miss Harriet Washington has laid out for us. One page at a time. Here and there. A little bit here and there. Here and there. Until we finish the book, man. One book at a time. One page at a time. Man. So we can find what we can learn and grow from. Make adjustments in our life if we need to. Protect ourselves if we need to. You know, make better decisions. Be more successful. Be able to be better successful. To be able to use the things that we have. Because we have all that we need to succeed. We have it. You just got to use it. It's probably there in abundance for you. Use it. Use it. Yeah, but man, that's what it is. Till next time, man. We're going to catch on the next episode where we're going to try to finish up the book. Man, I'm SHILO, man. I'm out. Shalom, man. I'm out here. I hope y'all have a wonderful night, man. Get at me. Like, comment, subscribe. Tell your people, man, I'm out here reading shit, man. That boy reading. Doing shit. I'm out here. Shalom.